Saba is a Chicago rapper who has been bouncing around on the scene for quite a few years now with his solo material. Some collaborations as well. He's part of the wider collective Pivot Gang, which haven't seen a huge amount of success as a group really, but probably deserve a bit more attention and probably should emphasize more of their strengths, I think, a bit more than they do. They should probably collaborate more on bigger songs, harder snapping bangers, because their collaboration album was pretty okay, to be fair. It was pretty decent, and I think they should try and lean into it a little bit more. And I think it's pretty safe to say that Saba overall, in the wider, you know, perspective of hip-hop and hip-hop fans, has been a bit overlooked, to be honest. Yeah, sure, Care For Me did well, but did it do that well in the way that it could have for a rapper who had such introspective visions and beautiful stories and heartbreaking stories to tell on that album? Sure, not every track was a, you know, a hit. I know not every track, you know, leaned into that side of what Saba is truly capable of doing, but the great stuff on that album was sensational and some of the best hip-hop writing of that year, bar none. I stand by it. I think it was fantastic. The writing, that is, I mean, I think the writing of that year was some of the best hip-hop writing is what I mean. But yeah, even the album itself was a really strong contender for hip-hop album of the year for 2018. But yeah, it just doesn't seem like everyone else is quite on board with him at the moment. It's interesting to see that some names are getting more attention than him, even though they're nowhere near as exciting as and as interesting as what he's capable of doing. I guess I'm thinking of someone like a Corday. Like, I feel like they aren't worlds apart in what they do, but you know, one of them is seeing a lot more success than the other, and I think one of them should be seeing more success than the other, and the one that isn't is Saba. And there's other names out there too that I think are getting more attention than you'd expect, considering Saba is a name that should be getting that kind of attention. But even without all that, I do like Saba, and I think Few Good Things is a pretty solid follow-up to Care For Me. It's not quite as strong, and I don't think it ever really reaches the poignancy of Care For Me, to be honest. But Saba is aiming for something different. He's shooting for something different, excuse me, this time around, and I think he's doing it pretty well. I like how he dibble-dabbles in the kind of like heavier, harder stuff, and then also goes into the really soft, easy-breezy type stuff that I think he ends up doing both pretty well, but he doesn't do either of them remarkably well. That's the thing with this album. It kind of sits in a mid-range where he's doing solid things, but nothing really ever pops out at being, you know, amazing, and I think that's where the album falls short. But I think the opening track is interesting. I like the way he eventually, you know, comes onto the beat with a really Kendrick type energy. I like the way he's he's rapping on this track. He sounds great. But immediately after this, you know, One Way or Every Fella With A Budget is just the complete opposite in terms of what he's bringing to the table. He's singing on this track. His voice, his inflection sounds way different to what it usually does. He just sounds so chilled out, and the guitar is really lovely as well. It's just one of the nicest hip-hop tracks I've heard in a while, where you're just getting such a really lovely, vibrant vibe oozing off of the track, and Saba just sounds at home. It's just really welcoming. I just like the way he's approaching his music here, and he kind of follows this up for a fair few tracks as well, where he keeps in this lane, but it's just a bit jointed in the way that it comes though, because the track after this is the G Herbo feature, and it's way harder and it snaps a little bit more. I mean, G Herbo's lyrics are pretty bad, to be honest. I could have done without his verse, but I think the energy he brings to the track is more of the point anyway. And then Fearmonger, I think Saba's just kind of experimenting with his voice on this one. He's got some really odd inflections jumping out. Some of the verses, he's actually sounding a bit like Eminem as well, with a kind of like rippity, speedily, rappity, pippity, pappity flow. But then Come My Way comes back to the really slow, really easy breezy nature, and then of course the hook, he just sounds really slurred. He sounds really kind of druggy in a way, but it sounds really cool, to be honest. So lots of different lanes that he's kind of driving in and out of here. But I think, you know, like I said already, he does both at a decent level, but never really kind of wows me with what he's doing. Simpler Times is a really nice track. It's reminiscent. It's kind of looking back to the old days. It's a lovely tune, and I will say that the key change at the end isn't welcomed by me. I mean, I've been pretty notoriously against key changes for most of my life, and I do feel like they're often quite cheesy. This one actually isn't anything like that I usually would say about a key change. It just is a bit random and out of nowhere, and it didn't really need it. Maybe it needed a bit more of an oomph, to be honest, to close a song out rather than doing what it did. But then, of course, we've got the darker menace that comes with a track like Stop That. I mean, his vocals on this one sound chilling. They sound kind of dark and creepy, but he doesn't really bring to the table what you'd expect a track like this lyrically to bring. I think he sounds harder and a bit nastier than what he's actually saying, because Saba is a pretty nice guy. I mean, I've seen him live too. He just comes across as such a welcoming, warm guy. And I think with a track like this, you just need a bit more of a... And, you know, I mean, I'm sat here saying that. I probably wouldn't be able to do it either. I don't think I could pull off a menacing look, a menacing attitude in any aspect of life. So, you know, I get it. But I think if you're going to try doing it, I think you've got to at least try matching that. He's certainly in his bag with tracks like Still. I mean, he's definitely better at this really carefree, easy, nice sounding stuff than I think he is at the harder stuff for sure. This track reminds me a lot of Mac Miller, to be honest. Mac Miller, man, I got straight away Mac Miller vibes coming out of this. You know, not like it's a replica, it's not a copycat or anything like that, but I just think Mac would probably slip a song like this into any of his albums with this kind of feeling that it gives off, and it wouldn't sound out of place. I like the track Soldier as well. I think it brings a nice, interesting perspective to the idea of what you think a soldier is. I often say that the only battle you have in life is with yourself. The only competition is with yourself. Ooh, Mr. Motivator. But this track kind of encapsulates that idea. And my God, Mr. Saba, my friend, on the first verse, your verse, my friend, you sound a bit like Andre 3000, my boy. I don't know if anyone else caught that, and I don't know if he was trying to do that. But I heard it. I heard Andre. And then we've got the final two tracks, 2012 and the title track. These two are the closest you get, I personally think, to reaching the levels that he was able to reach with the poignancy of Care For Me. They don't ever match it though, but they get pretty close. And these are some of the highlights, I think, on the album because of how endearing they are in the way that they're presented, and how Saba and the features as well, by the way, tackle them lyrically. Similar to Simpler Times in that reminiscent feel, and I think this track does it a little bit better, to be honest, just kind of looking back at the things that you just really needed in life, but you didn't realise at the time that it was literally just everything that you needed, and you kind of want to be brought back to that. A few good things. Saba on his final verse touching on social issues in a way that I think he does in a pretty interesting way, talking about the rich and the poor, and then Black Thought coming through as well, man, with such a great verse, paying homage to the people that he's lost, and a really wise Black Thought line as well, where he's talking about, you know, the good things in life, they come in fews, you know, they're not going to all hit you at once, not everything's going to be great at once, but they come in small doses, and when they do, you really feel them. And I think Black Thought is the master to just bring wise words like that to the table in the way that he does. You gotta love Black Thought, man. God damn. So yeah, lots of good things to say about this album. I like the harder, snappier tracks. I just think they don't snap as hard as they really should do, and they ought to. Like I say, they sit in this mid-range of sounding okay, but they're nothing too special. And the softer tracks as well are definitely the best moments on the album. But again, so much of the same thing. He kind of repeats a lot of what he's doing throughout. And, you know, the nicer moments don't hit you like, you know, like they don't hit your heart, you know, they're not like poking through at your heart or anything like that. They're just really nice on the ears. And I think Saba does a good job overall of this album. 6.5 out of 10. It's an easy 6.5 out of 10 for me, in the sense that I think it's just a solid album, a solid set of tracks. Good to see that Saba is back. It's not on the level of Care For Me, but it's worth your time. It's good. It's a good album. And I like Saba, and I think he's always worth anyone's time. And that's my review. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you agreed with me as well. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you disagree, I'd love to hear what you have to say. Thank you as always for watching. Do subscribe if you haven't already, and goodbye. Tell me what I should review next also, and goodbye.